Good afternoon and welcome to this webinar, and today we have Alejandro Amelini here with us, and he's going to present a presentation about blended learning as a new normal. And I'm very pleased to have Alejandro with us today, and I've been looking very much forward to this presentation. Let me start to introduce you to Alejandro Amelini. Alejandro is a professor of learning and teaching in higher education. He's also the director of the Institute of Learning and Teaching in Higher Education at the University of Northampton. And his key role, you could say, is to provide leadership in this area, in this field, and about learning, teaching and learning innovation. And we know that you have worked with that for many years, and you're very good at it, Ali, and it's across all the faculties at Northampton, so it's a big task. His work includes the development, implementation and evaluation of Northampton's learning and teaching plan, which includes a comprehensive externally accredited staff development program. So, yeah. And he's also the strategic lead for the redesign of all programs for blended learning, which is going to talk about today, and very much about the preparation for the university's move to its new campus in the center of Northampton. Ali's research is long and focusing also on learning, innovation, online pedagogic, course design in online environments, institutional capacity building, and open practices. And I think I would, if you want to read more about Ali, I'll put the link down here also so you can see publications and further details about Ali. And I think we would like to give the word now for you, Ali, and the content today is that Ali will give the presentation, and after that you will be able to ask questions, so we will let time also for that. And yeah, it's just for me to say very much welcome to Ali, and yeah, enjoy.
Thank you, Anita, and thank you, It's Learning, for inviting me to do this presentation and to share the next 45 minutes or an hour with you, and hopefully have a good academic discussion on the issues that will be raised throughout the presentation. I have termed this presentation blended learning as a new normal, and we will try and figure out what that means in the context of Northampton and beyond. Let me start by doing the if you like, the institutional thing. That slide that you're looking at is an introduction to the University of Northampton. The top line is the mission: transforming lives and inspiring change. We've got a sense of purpose and belief in the second line. The how is the next line, and a bit more information below. But what we are is essentially a young university focused and designed for 21st century learning. I should also point out that despite the interesting perceptions of some of the kings of England throughout history, Northampton, had continued its trajectory throughout the centuries, would now be around 700 years old. But someone in the monarchy over the years decided to shut it down for a period, so we cannot compete with the likes of Oxford and Cambridge in terms of age. But certainly we can in other ways. One of the major things one of the major projects that is occupying us at the moment at Northampton is the construction, the development of our new campus. The new campus is called Waterside, and attached to the development of the campus, you of course have a range of changes that need to go with it, one of which is the pedagogic change that we're in the process of implementing. That change process was happening even before the Waterside development was even on the horizon. We started rolling out significant cross-institutional change from 2012, and at that point we didn't know a thing about Waterside. But what the new campus does is it gives us a deadline of September 2018 when it opens, a deadline by which we would like most of this change to have taken effect. And I will walk you through the process of change throughout today's presentation. What principles do we use to underpin the set of changes that we're implementing? The first, the quality of teaching is central, in our view, to the quality of the student experience. Secondly, we believe that in line with the university's mission of transforming lives and inspiring change, we want inspirational teaching to enable transformational learning experiences. In order to implement this, we want to grow what we call our intellectual capital. So capacity building internally is key to excellent design and delivery of our programs. And finally, knowledge and learning as open, scalable, collaborative, flexible, inclusive and mobile. So these are four of the many principles we could be using to underpin the pedagogic change on a large scale that we're implementing. Just for context, Northampton has 13,500 students, so it's not one of the big universities. It is situated in the heart of England, in the south part of the East Midlands, around an hour north of London. And Northampton is a small town. So many of our students are Northamptonshire students, but we attract students from over 100 different countries and at both undergraduate and postgraduate level. To give you a bit of an insight into how this pedagogic change comes about, I'm going to use an adapted version of a tried and tested model that some of you may have seen before. Certainly a couple of you in the audience may have seen before, and that is Julie Salmon's innovation pipeline model. On the left, you've got on the y-axis missions, markets and contexts. So where are our students? Are they the students of today or the students of the future? And on the x-axis at the bottom, you've got technology and pedagogy of today or technology and pedagogy of tomorrow. So the quadrant in the bottom left corner is what needs to happen for the university not to collapse. These are the mission critical things. These are the things that cannot break. So there you would find things like the e-library, the networking environment, the virtual learning environment, in other words, our equivalent of its learning, and any other university-supported technologies that are considered to be mission critical. In the top left quadrant, that would mean the pedagogy and the technology of today for the students of the future. What we've got there is creative applications of what we've got to attract new students. That's pretty straightforward. In the bottom right quadrant, you've got the programs and the students of today embracing new approaches and taking some risks in the process. And the most exciting bit, the top right, is the new students coming to this university on the basis of new approaches and therefore at a higher risk to themselves and to us. So the green column on the right is really the the more the knowledge generator, and the column on the left is the embedding one. Or in other words, you've got the innovation pipeline going from right to left, where the left is your development and the right is your research. This is not. This is slightly adapted from what Salmon produced in her 2014 paper, but I think it provides a useful environment for what I'm going to, or a useful context for what I'm going to explain in the next few slides. I said that at the beginning that Northampton is using even the slogan, if you like, of active blended learning as a new norm. So what does that mean? Well, the new normal means that you can no longer see it. It is what we do. Active blended learning is not an addition to your job. It is your job. So the excuse that, oh, I've got to do blended learning on top of everything else. No, blended learning is your everything else. And just bear in mind that Northampton is not a distance learning university. We do have some occasional, some very specific and sometimes bespoke distance learning programs, but that's not what we do in terms of our normal bread and butter. What we do is campus-based education, and within that campus-based education we have integrated active blended learning as the way in which we operate. So if I showed you this, if I showed you that slide, probably you would equate that with something that is only a few hundred years old, but people feel excited by it, and they call it in sexy ways. So they call it the flipped classroom. And when I explain this to colleagues and I show them this, oh yes, it's a flipped classroom, they say, well, actually, yes, but no, it doesn't actually work very well in that way, because of many reasons, and bear in mind this is a massive oversimplification of reality, but still it doesn't work very well, because if you do as the arrow suggests, you find yourself in the position where 75–80% of your students come very ill prepared because they did not engage with a pre-session cognitive exposure to, for example, multimedia materials. And they come to the face-to-face session not knowing very much and expecting the tutor to lecture at them or to tell them what they didn't do in preparation for it. So instead, we very much emphasize in our approach to active blended learning as a new normal, we very much emphasize the inclusion of a little block there, which is a question mark for you to think about, of course, and that would provide a little bit of help to address, for instance, the lack of engagement of students with digital content in advance of a face-to-face session. What is that? Well, that is activation of schemata or asynchronous online tasks. So if you think about this as a package where the first two blocks work together, the digital content and the activities to do something with that content, what you get is that you get a package of digital content and tasks for sense making of those resources, followed by a face-to-face session, followed by other online work or face-to-face work as appropriate. Now, a lot of my colleagues here and elsewhere across the sector, not just in the UK but globally, seem to be quite obsessed with the provision of resources. They seem to think that content is king. Well, we think it's not king. Content is not king. What matters is not the content, but what students do with the content to achieve learning outcomes. So that package of online and face-to-face work, where digital resources are part of it, but we spend a lot of time designing student-centered tasks for sense-making, that is what makes if you like, the flipped classroom a bit more successful than would otherwise be the case. This is not prescriptive. This is one possible way forward. The blocks are movable. You can do things in different order, but essentially the primary concern here is what matters is what students do with resources in order to achieve outcomes, and they achieve those outcomes and evidence those achievements through appropriate aligned assessments. Because this is very much there's a common interest in the audience and in its learning, an interest in virtual learning environments. That's what VLE stands for. Some others call it learning management systems, LMEs. I thought I would share with you one or two things about what that arrow model translates into the use of our virtual learning environment here at Northampton. And it is summarized very, very crudely and pretty brutally like that. You've got a foundation level where the focus is on delivery of stuff, where you just put things online and hope magic will happen, and through that delivery approach, using the virtual learning environment as a repository of content, then that's the starting point. Now, sadly, many of my colleagues and many of my friends, all they do with the VLE is that. It's a good starting point, or it's a very poor point to stop. So we need to look at other things. Participation and collaboration with engagement and active learning as their objectives, respectively. Those are much better ways of approaching the use of your virtual learning environment. We're not saying that one is better than the other. In some cases, a really good engagement is online in the VLE is supported and supplemented through active learning in the classroom. In some other cases, the collaboration for active learning happens online and it is supplemented in the classroom. So both of the bottom two rows are actually relevant and necessary. I would argue that the blended learning as the new normal operates within the bottom two, participation and collaboration. So that's what we're doing with or without a new campus. This is what we're doing today. We have a large-scale course redesign project which we monitor and we support across all 4 faculties. We have we have dashboards that monitor progress, modules that have and have not been redesigned for active blended learning, and we support staff by putting a lot of money into human resources, learning technologists, learning designers, teaching coordinators and so forth to enable this change to happen. What we want to get rid of, what we want to move away from is the pretty much what I'm doing what I'm doing to you at the moment, talking at you for an extended period of time. That's what we don't want to do. And in response to that, the new campus has a number of interesting key features. So I'd like you to think for about 3 minutes. Why would you build a new campus? And secondly, what is the one feature this campus would have that would perhaps enable you to do what you cannot do today? I would like to invite you to think about that for 2 or 3 minutes. I'll give you Northampton's attempted response to this. There's a set of formal responses and a set of other responses, and I'll probably give you both to give you a sense of how we answered this. So part 1 of the answer, if you can see my slide now, is, again, because I like 2x2 matrices, I'm answering it through a 2x2 matrix. If the risk appetite by the university is low and the need to diversify is low, then you've got the cats. They're happy animals. They sit in the corner, usually bottom left corner, and they seem content because they have a market. They have a market sorted out for them. They have enough students. They have enough research, so they are happy. If the need to diversify is high, but the risk appetite is low, what you've got there are the chinchillas. And I don't know if you know much about chinchillas, but chinchillas are not exactly the most creative of animals, but they don't take too many risks, but they need to diversify because they have a problem with their teeth. They need to keep their teeth in check, otherwise they grow and the teeth can kill the animal. So they need to sharpen them and to wear them down on a regular basis. And that's a different type of university that wants to diversify in those peculiar ways where the risk appetite is low. When the risk appetite is high but the needs are low, what you've got is people taking unnecessary risks, and that's what we refer to as free climbers. So there are universities that do take a lot of risks, although you could argue that really perhaps they shouldn't be taking them. And then you've got the potential entrepreneurial university, and that's where we would like to see ourselves, where we need to take risks, otherwise we would not survive in an environment like the UK higher education environment, and we also need to diversify, otherwise our courses would not compete against the permanently newly updated courses by other providers. So that's one way in which a new campus can provide an environment where we can thrive as an entrepreneurial university that does not just sit back, relax, and hope the students will come. The students will not necessarily come to us. This is a different way of seeing it. We need to, in the higher education market in the UK, we need to compete on various things. So you've got on the y-axis the perceived differences versus our competitors, and on the x-axis you've got the perceived value for money versus our competitors. So we can compete on specialism, on the disciplines that we offer, and we can compete on value added. In our case at Northampton, we have a small, very small handful of highly specialized disciplines such as leather technology and leather engineering or lift engineering, for example. But it is for that reason then that we very much try and compete on value added. How do we make the experience of our students better for themselves and for the community where they live? And it is the campus that enables the transformational pathway from the gloomy glen where perhaps we are to the uplands where we would like to be. And that's the sunlit uplands. That's what the new campus might look like. That's an artist's impression. The walls are going up as we speak. It is by the river in the center of town. It is an opportunity for a rejuvenation and redevelopment of the entire town of Northampton, as well as an opportunity to revamp ourselves as a university. That's what the Learning Commons or the library would or will hopefully look like. Again, an artist's impression. These things are being built as we speak, and there is a Waterside website with a webcam that shows you progress. What are the features of the new campus? Well, 24/7 learning commons, that's the area where the students meet. That's the area where they have quiet study spaces and where they have social study spaces. Learning commons, learning space. Effective and flexible use of space with as much generic teaching spaces as possible, so they can be used for a variety of purposes. Smaller footprint, so we're going to have a smaller campus than the combination of both current campuses that we've got at the moment. It will be, as I said, in the center of the town, and here is where we come to some of the most difficult bits to swallow. There will be no lecture theatres, so we're not building any. There will be lots of teaching spaces, on average of about 40 students in size. There will be a few exceptions with up to 60 students, but nothing bigger than that. Even the sports hall that we were going to use as a big lecture theatre, that will not be used in that way. And critically, there will be no staff offices. So the luxury that I've got at the moment, I've got this office here where I'm working, where I'm talking to you now. We'll no longer have that. We'll have plenty of private spaces that we can use, but in terms of working space, that will all be shared space and no fixed desks other than special needs colleagues. Everything will be essentially hot desking. And of course, active blended learning as a new normal. Another view of the building, again, opening in September 2018. That's happening, or that was happening a few months ago. And as part of the consultation for this Waterside readiness and active blended learning as a new normal, we consulted a lot of colleagues, we consulted people who gave us their views on their engagement with this redesign process for all courses. I'm going to give this a little try and see if it works on the system. This is Kyfin Jones, a senior lecturer in education. Let's see what he has to say about the change.
I'm Kyfin Jones, and I'm a senior lecturer in education here at the School of Education. Well, I think the move to Waterside, obviously it's been rumbling on for some time, and there's a lot of sort of collaboration that's gone on with colleagues, lots of discussion, etc. Personally, however, I don't think it's made an enormous difference to what I do anyway, because I think it reminds me a bit like the millennium. We had this event that was going to change everything, and I think in fact sometimes it's a little bit anticlimactic, and how I see Waterside is more of a general progression and a move towards how we change things and think about things and reevaluate things. Yes, Waterside's there, yes, it's very important that we're ready for that, but actually I don't think it's a kind of an enormous event that we need to sort of think of it in that way. We've got to see it in a more of a kind of measured event that's running alongside what we would normally do.
Right. So the redesign process, in his case, operates as part of a continuum. It's not major. It's not a major thing in relation to what he already does. Now, I wish we had a situation like that across the board. For many colleagues, this is a major change. For many colleagues, this is shifting away from standard practice onto a much more interactive approach to teaching and learning in higher education that they are really not used to, that they don't have the repertoire to implement in the classroom or online. And that is the big issue that we're facing as we redesign our courses. So how do we bring colleagues with us is a key thing. I would suggest to you that 3 elements are key to bringing colleagues with us. One is the use and presentation of evidence in suitable, appropriate formats for colleagues to identify with and to believe in. Support, as the word suggests, and agency, which means power. So let me briefly tell you a bit about each. Evidence. How do we know things work? And particularly when they don't necessarily work, or when we have evidence that is a bit mixed, what do we do to make it? Well, we work with the risk takers, and that's the exciting part of this. People who do not wait for evidence to come out of other institutions, people who are willing to produce the evidence themselves through their own practice, take risks, and evaluate that and share the results with others. Support. Support happens in a variety of ways, and that's probably the single one, the strongest part of the work that we do. We have continuing professional development schemes for people that are externally accredited by the Higher Education Academy. That's what AGA stands for. It's not dependent on doing a postgraduate certificate. You get accredited on the basis of other things that I can tell you about another day. These approaches are designed with a clear focus on capacity building, where peer observation is key. They are embedded in the appraisal process, which we call PDR. It interacts well with quality enhancement and quality assurance. Carpe Diem, or Cairo, as a learning design process in academic teams is key to this. And it's not limited to academic staff. It engages professional services, in other words, non-academics, as well as others like learning designers and learning technologists. So support is a big part of what we do to bring people with us. Let's put the money where the mouth is and support these people move on to new ways of doing things, new ways of working, new ways of learning and teaching, new ways of assessing students. Agency, as I said, means power, and ultimately any change that we implement will translate into practices in the classroom. Whoever decides on what happens and what does not happen in the classroom is the tutor, and that's what agency stands for. So evidence, support, and agency, key to bringing people with you on a journey of change towards active blended learning. How can then, for example, I mentioned a lot about staff development and an accredited scheme of staff development in my support slide. How does staff development underpin a move to a new environment? Well, I would suggest to you that we've got the evidence, support, and agency, as you can see there at the top and on the right. Evidence, support, and agency, as I said before. That is followed by impact assessment, and that is followed by policy development. So in other ways, in other words, from research to practice, to impact assessment, to policy, and back to research. That cycle helps us take informed decisions based on consultation, based on the views of the key stakeholders, namely the students and staff, as well as employers and others, to constantly review and update our policy. Nothing has been easy in this process. Nothing has been straightforward. In relation to active blended learning as our new normal, we have had a number of pedagogic challenges, some of which have to do with people's own views on teaching and learning, what they believe works and what they believe doesn't, or indeed how well trained or otherwise they are to teach higher education in higher educational settings, both in face-to-face mode and in online mode. The requirements by professional bodies. If you are studying to be a nurse, or if you're studying to be a psychologist, or you're studying to be an engineer or a lawyer, there are requirements in terms of contact time or amount of practice in the field that these bodies require. As I listed contact time separately because that is obviously an obsession by many students, their parents, and many members of staff too. We are protecting contact time, and in line with the Quality Assurance Agency's definition of contact time, where there are tutor-facilitated activities that take place online, but they are structured and timed, these activities do count as contact time as well. Workload and space. Well, we've got some courses with large cohorts. The solution of not having large lecture theatres is not the cheapest. It will require multiple teaching. It will require smaller groups with more tutors, and that in turn means problems with timetabling, finding space for all of this, a longer working day perhaps, starting at 9 o'clock but finishing maybe at 8 or 9 in the evening. Some schools, some departments are already doing that. That's standard practice in the business school, for example, or now the Faculty of Business and Law. The argument that blended learning means more work, well, no, it doesn't mean more work. That is our work, but it is a different type of work, and we've got to manage it differently, plan it differently, and deliver it differently. More challenges, digital transformation. Some work has been done on this already. This is from Oxford Brookes, for example, where they got an established model of first steps developed and outstanding. I invite you to look at that if you have the time. It's very useful. We have our own stance on this, which we could summarize as non-literacy, literacy, competence, and fluency, which I could perhaps illustrate in that way. Non-literacy, you don't even make sense of it, even with a map. Literacy, you can more or less sort yourself out if you're given enough guidance. Competence, you no longer need the map, and fluency, it's not just not needing the map, but you're free to create and develop others as well. So that's literacy. I know the tools. Competence, I can enhance my teaching because of the clever use of those tools. And fluency, I can enable others to grow. It's not just my own development, but the development of others. In summary, basic knowledge of the tools, my practice, and the practices of others. So, the fourth and final challenge I wanted to discuss with you today is the provision of information versus communication versus a deliberate attempt to engage with colleagues. And I think the University of Northampton didn't get this right, or hasn't so far. There has been information overflow, but there has been very little in the way of consultation and engagement to make decisions on the new campus based on the input of colleagues and students. Many of the decisions taken have been on the basis of budgets and what we could do with the money we've got, but not in terms of what the stakeholders meant or what they wanted. To conclude, a few thoughts. At Google, when they look for graduates, they look for three things, which are listed on the screen there. Those three are three key criteria they use for recruitment. So I'm suggesting to you today that at universities and at our strategic partners, we need to apply a similar approach. We need to think about self-prepared learners who want to become better teachers, better researchers, who can cope with failure and who can seek and offer feedback on a regular basis, feedback for development and growth, not feedback as a line management tool. We want colleagues and partners who are comfortable with ambiguity, who can manage, promote, evaluate change, who can share and form the opinions of others, and who can galvanize teams. And we also want connectors who learn with and from others who are different from them. And of course we want digitally fluent change agents who make positive change in the communities they exist to serve. So this is where we're going at Northampton. This is what we're trying to do. It is very much focused on pedagogic change. It is very much focused on bringing colleagues with us. It is very much focused on ADL as our new normal. But ultimately, for the future, this is the type of colleagues we want, and that's the journey we're on. I'm going to stop here in order to give ourselves perhaps a few minutes for comments, for questions, for expressions of horror, and other reactions from the audience. So for now, but just for a few minutes, thank you very much. And over to you, Anita, to moderate the question and answer session. Thank you all for your participation, for engaging with this session. My details were available on the last slide. I don't know if you can still see it, probably not, but Anita has them, and I'll be more than happy to interact with you by any other means, synchronously or asynchronously, to discuss any follow-up issues. So for now, and from Northampton, thank you all very much. Over to you, Anita.
Thank you so much, and thank you so much for the presentation today, Ali. It was a pleasure to have you here, and so I just want to thank you and say that you can see the last slide here. That is the contact information for Ali. So if you have any questions, or if you want in contact with us, you can do that. So thank you so much, and thank you from here in Denmark. So I hope to see you again another time in the webinar, and yes, thank you so much.
Farvel for os, og vi ses snart.
Vi ses.
Vi ses.